to help counteract some of the Nietzsche I've been reading, help balance it out a little bit. I've been reading up and watching some videos on Socrates. And, there's some fundamental differences between the two, perhaps most notably at its core. Socrates, I think they both believe that us as humans, our objective is happiness, pleasure in some way, right? We want to feel good, we want to feel happy. The mechanism of getting there, though, I think is where they diverge. Nietzsche would say it's all about power and obtaining, leveraging, exploiting the power that you naturally have, kind of that naturalistic approach to it, versus Socrates, who would say that it's about virtue. Being virtuous is what leads to true happiness. And, the way he articulates that, he makes a few statements about it. He says that he doesn't believe anybody would intentionally commit evil. And when you first hear that, you can have a reaction to it, but as you read deeper what he means and what he says around it, it's similar to the math that we talk about. What he says is that they think it's net positive when they commit an evil act. When they assess everything, they look at, the pros, the cons, the costs, benefits, etc., and it appears as if it's net positive. They don't realize the pain or the degree of pain it causes somebody else, or even the degree of pain it causes themselves to do these evil acts. So they do it. So it's done more out of ignorance, right, than it is out of intentionally trying to be evil. And that's an interesting concept to think of it that way. And it kind of speaks to the idea that there's almost an unnatural nature to it. He says the key to finding or becoming virtuous is just to have the knowledge, to understand what it means to be virtuous, and that it's not necessarily what you would be inclined towards, right? Which I guess is more of the Nietzsche feel, which is power and the benefits that come with having and exploiting power. He even goes so far to say, Socrates, that he believes that it is worse to commit an injustice than to have it committed on you. So the victim in some ways is better off than the person who actually commits it. And if you take that a level deeper, I think what he's trying to say is that the damage it does to you, again, that hidden cost in the calculation we just talked about when somebody commits evil, that hidden cost of what it does to you as a person, what it does to, Socrates would say, to your soul, not in a religious sense, but just in that kind of core of who you are, it makes you worse off. Versus if something bad is done to you and you're caused physical harm or potentially even death, if your soul is still intact, if your virtue is still intact, you're net better off, right? You're in a better position. And again, interesting concept. And as I think about it, I tend to inherently agree with that, right? You should act the right way. That's the noble thing to do. That's the right way to do it. That seems to be it. But it feels very aspirational when you hear Socrates talk about it. I mean, the idea that you'd rather be the one who is harmed in some way versus the one doing the harming seems illogical. It seems unnatural. But it also feels aspirational. As I said, it feels like something, if we all aspire to that, we'd be better off as a society. So there's appeal to it. But it almost has a bit of a leap of faith logic to it, as I've talked about before. This idea of, you look at what Socrates is saying, and it does seem so unnatural. It does seem that man, rhetorical, human, I guess I should say, the human race has to work so hard to try and be virtuous. We have to fight against so many flaws of the mind and so many things that we're naturally pulled to, and these natural compulsions to seek our own benefit and exploit power and to protect our power. It's such an unnatural thing that we need to do. And if you look at that very logically, you would say, well, why would it be so hard? Why would it be so unnatural for you to have to do that? And you need almost something like a Socrates view or a religious view, all these other ones that come in that give you this aspiration, that ask you to take this leap of faith, to just believe it, that it's worth it, that you should act that way, even though it doesn't feel as natural to you, even though it's so hard to do, that you should strive towards that. Because without it, what would society be? Again, it makes me wonder. How do we know for certain, right? How do we know for certain Nietzsche is not right? Because I think that's what Nietzsche is playing off of ultimately. He's saying, how could something that's so natural, that's so core to who we are as people, that is so hard to turn off, how could that be wrong? How could that not be the thing we should be going after? And again, I get the logic of that. I get the logic of that. I get why Socrates would almost have to have this more conceptual idea of what it means to be good, because you need that counterbalance. If you just look at the raw data that you have in front of you that's tangible and you can see, it seems like going after the power, not worrying about virtue so much, should win. So Socrates is almost trying to give you this other hidden part of the equation that you can't see, to say, hey, don't forget this is here. And I guess the question becomes a very individual one, right? You can't answer it for everybody, but for yourself. Is it true? Is that hidden cost actually as bad as Socrates says it is? If you go out and just try and look out for yourself and do best by yourself, and make sure you're in the best possible position you could be, are you actually worse off? And, in short, to wrap this up, my answer would be yes. But when I hold myself to the same standard I would hold anybody to, why? Why do you say yes? And why do you have a degree of certainty or at least a strong inclination to believe that's true? It's hard to explain it. I believe it's true because I want it to be true. I believe it's true because it feels like it should be right to be true. I believe it's true because anecdotally, I think that's what we hear and what we see, that if you live a life of purpose and trying to do the right thing by people, you're better off. But is it as tangible and provable? Is it as measurable? And can there be any certainty that actually is, in effect, the right way to live?